Hello and welcome in this short video. Today we will see how to get started with the Team Server REST API. This video supports a recent blog post I shared, this one. I will follow the different steps described in this blog post, and so let's start. So we will start with an Excel workbook. So I will download this Excel workbook. I will get a zip file. In this zip file I have my workbook. I double click on it to open it. So you will need Excel to use our feature. When I open my workbook, I have a message which asks me if I want to edit this file. I will accept. I have a second message regarding the macros which are disabled, and this file contains the macros which will be used to access the REST API of Team Server. So I will accept. If you don't have this message, you need to go to your file options. In Trust Center, you will have a Trust Center setting, and in Trust Center settings, you can have different settings for your macro, and you can disable all macro without notification, and for instance the file will not work if you have this one, for example, and maybe you will need to ask your administrator if you don't have the rights to update these settings, and then you should be able to access the different macros. The first macro in the first worksheet will allow me to get my Team Server route. To get this value, I have my RStudio Data Architect installed on the same machine, and my repository has been set. And if we look here, I have my Team Server URL which has been specified, and my macro will use, if we look what the macro behind the scene, I can go to the code, and if I look, I can see that I will I will go to the worksheet TS parameter, and then I will call a method which is get TS route, and this method is using an RStudio application. So if we look in RStudio, here you have a documentation. So if you click on the small arrow, you will have automation interface reference. If you open the automation interface reference, you have all the explanation how to use this COM automation. So this is not the REST API of Team Server. Right here, I'm just using the COM automation to access my data architect. And if we look at the code, and I declare a variable of RStudio application, and then I will use a method from my diagram manager to get the registry key used by data architect to store the value of my portal address, okay, which is my Team Server. So this is what I have done, and if we look, the value I got, it comes here, and if I check my data architect, if I go back here and get my options, you will see the same value is used in my settings. Okay, so if it doesn't work, you need to check if you have a data architect, if you have set the option properly. Otherwise, regarding the code we have here, to use my RStudio application, we will see this in the post later, we have used tools reference, and in your tools reference, you can add RStudio type library. Okay, you will find it in RStudio, or you can search for it, and then you check it, and you will have you will have RStudio application available, and you will be able to use, for example, if I go here, I can type control space, and if I put a dot, I will have my different method because I have used my reference RStudio type library. If I go back to my spreadsheet, here we can then, if we look at the post, I have explained all you need to make it work. And the first step, you need to register. So we will use our Team Server to access it. And then you will need a client ID and a secret bid. So if I go back here, I can just click my button. You will generate for me a unique grid, the same for the secret. And when I have these three values, I can click the button register, and you will automatically call your Team Server API, and you will get these different values depending on your settings, and you will get this value automatically filled. Every time you can click on the documentation to check it if you want. When I click my documentation, I can see how to obtain my authorization access. I will need to send this value, and this is what happened behind the scene. Every time you can go to the code and you can check what happens. If you look here, you have different modules, and I have one module for each worksheet, and otherwise in some MISC function in different objects. So, and every time, don't forget that you can right-click any button, and you go to assign a macro, edit, and you will automatically scroll to the appropriate function. So from here, you see that I activate this worksheet, and then I check the different values, and if I have my different value, I get the three different cells here. Okay, if we go back, and then I will create my URL to access my method, and I always display some message here, and you can see the JSON file, the JSON structure that is used to access during the call, and I calling the method post, and with the URL we have created earlier, which is this one, and then I have an answer response from the server, and I can check this answer, and if I have the appropriate value, I will then put my values directly in the good fields. So this is what we have seen here. I put the TS API URL route. If you want to access your own method, you can use this one later in your browser, for example. And here I have my URL to get my authorization code. So if we look here, I can open the documentation, and directly I can see that to get my authorization code, I will need to give all these different information, and then it will give me, it will prompt me for my credentials directly. So you can use this URL, you can copy it to your clipboard, or you can directly open your default browser from this button. You will automatically navigate to your team server. You need to specify the credentials that you want to use to access the API. So then every time you call the API, you will use this user. This user will be used, and if this user is used, it means that you will only see the object that this user has the right granted to access. If you don't have permission to access a specific resource, you will not get this resource, obviously, with the API. So I log in with my credentials, and then the server asks me, do you want to authorize this client to access the different resource? We can see that this number is the client ID. Okay, we have generated in the first step. And if I authorize it, automatically we'll navigate to this documentation page, which explains what we are doing. And what we need to do is to copy this code. You see that it has added a code in my URL. I can copy my code, and then I go back to my spreadsheet, to my worksheet, and I can paste my code. As I have a code, I can now request an access token to get access, so we can see the code. I need my client ID, my client secret, what I want to do, and where I should be routed. If you are using a web server, for example, you will use this different URL to directly navigate to the appropriate web page. So if I go back here, I can request with this value, and now I have my access token, and with this access token, I will be able to query all the different resources available in the solution. So for example, if I open this web page, here you can see the different documentation regarding the API and also the API references. And you, depending on the object you want to query, you can go, for example, to entities. I want to get all my entities, so I just need to use this URL and to provide when I query this this URL, I need to provide my access token. So we have it here, and I will get my answer using this access token, which use my user, my credentials, and so everything is secure. If I go now to the next worksheet, I can click my get glossaries button, and when I call it, here I just show the JSON I got from the server, and below I display my different glossaries that which are provided by the JSON structure, and I parse it and I put my different values. So I have different glossaries, different. This is the ID of my glossaries, and if I want, then I can copy this value. It will be the next step explained in the blog post. I can paste my code here, and I can get the terms from this glossary, and automatically it connects to the API, and it will parse the different terms. Here you have the documentation as usual regarding the specific call I use, and every time, as usual, you can go to the code and manage it. So you can see here the name of my term, here its definition and the different values it has, its ID. So I can always copy my ID, and I can go to my last tab, and if I paste my term ID, I can get its value directly. You can see here I have my the name of the term, the glossary belongs, what kind of the type of the term, its status, and so on. Okay, I have different values, and I can even change the values if I want to update it, and I will write. So if I look at the code, if I go to edit, here you will see the code. I go to get my parameters, I go to the first worksheet, I get the different values, and with these values I will be able to create my URL. You have here the URL itself of the documentation. Here it's the call URL, and as usual, I always display in my immediate window the different values showing what is happening. Yeah, if we go back to the post, so we have seen how to obtain, you have all the details about the different steps. I was quick in the video. How to access the resource, the example, and then how to understand. So the right click on your button to check the different macros. You can also put some breakpoint when you want to. If I go back, for example, here, if I go to my glossaries, I will navigate like this. And if I want to see what is happening here, I can go, for example, I will click in the gutter here to put a breakpoint, to set a breakpoint. So it is in red. And if I go back to my spreadsheet, if I click my, oops, I will click elsewhere. Now I click on my button, and when my script comes to my breakpoint, I can check the value. Right now it is empty. If I go to the next line, I can see that my URL has this value. I will print this value in my immediate window. If I go to the bottom, if I navigate, I can see the different value that has been printed, and then I can go ahead and navigate to see. I have yeah, okay. My cursor was not at the last row, and so it has been printed above. You can always clear if you want to be sure to see everything. Soup. And delete. And then yeah, if I go to new, it's printing some empty line, and then I have my JSON file, it's a structure, okay, and you can see it everywhere, every time. And here I will go to this parse glossary method. So I will go step into this method, and I will see how I parse, and for each glossary, so I get my list of glossaries from this JSON structure, okay, business glossaries, and then I will parse it, and I will print my values directly in my spreadsheet, and I will add one each time I have a new value to go to the next row, and that's it. I can click play to continue, and if I go back to my spreadsheet, I have my values already written. Once you have finished all your different tests, you can unregister your client ID, and so your application, your Excel file won't be able to connect to, or you can reuse this client ID and this access token from any other solution if you want to. For instance, if I go back to my code, if I look here, I have my access token with my URL. If I don't need to use my Excel, if I go back to my browser, I can click to open a new window, and if I navigate to my business glossary method with my access token, as you can see, I get my JSON structure with all my information directly in my browser. So you can create your own application using the language you need. So I can click here, and I will unregister from my server, calling the register method. Client successfully unregistered. And if I want, I can clean my Excel spreadsheet and remove all my data. That's it.